Howdy mappers! Welcome to a new tutorial for Campaign Cartographer 3+. In this series, I'll be having a look at symbol creation. And for this first video, we're going to have a look at how to acquire the images and how to prepare the images we will be using for symbols. Now, there are many ways you can get your images. If you're an artist, you may want to actually draw them yourself in a painting program, or maybe draw them on paper, scan them in, prepare them, whatever. But for the most of us, we may not be that artistically inclined, so we're going to have to find them on the internet. And there are a lot of images on the internet that we can use as symbols in Campaign Cartographer. Basically, in theory, any image we find can be used. But of course, there are some limitations, and some images are better suited as symbols than others. So today, we'll be going out on the internet. I'll be grabbing a set of images, and then I'm going to show you how to prepare these images for import into Campaign Cartographer 3 as a symbol catalog. For this first video, we will only be looking at how to prepare the actual images. I will look at how to import them into a symbol catalog in my next video. So, before we get started, let's mention one important thing about images found on the internet. And that is the artist's rights. You'll find a lot of images, and in theory you can download to your computer any image you see in your web browser on the internet. But it is important that you always respect the artist's rights. Even if you can find and see the image on the internet, does not mean that you are allowed to use that image. And there are important distinctions in how you use an image as well. Many images, for example, are fine to download and use for your personal use, but you cannot redistribute them, which includes modifying the images and then redistributing those copies. Other images are completely free to use, and you can redistribute them and send them to others and what's not. But it is important that when you get images from the internet, that you check what restrictions apply to these images. For example, if you download images that are only for your personal use, you might not even be allowed to show maps to others that incorporate these symbols. So make sure you are legally allowed to use whatever images you download. Of course, if you're an artist and make these images yourself, you don't have that kind of problem because you control your own images, but always respect the user's rights outlined in the images. And when you find an image on a website, try to look up, find out how you are allowed to use the image. If you don't find any information at all, that's more an indication that you are not allowed to use the image rather than it's free for the taking. So today I'm just going to start by going out there and grabbing some images. I know of a location already, so I'm just going to visit that location and grab my images. And it's a Norwegian site, so you might not actually understand all the text here, but that's not really that important. What I'm getting here is basically the road signs used on Norwegian roads, which would be nice to use in some maps, and which are actually legal for me to use. So I'm just gonna grab a package of files here. I know the zip file do contain some files, some images. I download it and I extract it, and I'm just gonna put it on my desktop for now. The desktop is not the final location for these files. It's just a temporary storage while I work on them. So extract them, and voila, I get some images. I'm not going to go into more detail about how to acquire image from the net. You all know how to actually download your images. This was just going to a website and grabbing some images, and they are here now in this nice little folder on my desktop, which contains a nice set of image files. Now, the image files I grabbed here are basically the worst kind of images I could have grabbed. And what do I mean by that? Well, there are two problems with these images. First of all, as you can see from the file extension, they are JPEG images. And if you know anything about image formats, you know that JPEG images cannot have transparent backgrounds. When using images in Campaign Cartographer, transparent backgrounds are vital because images are always square. As you can see, when I hover over this image, you can see this white square around. This is the actual image. An image cannot be round or rectangular. Oh, sorry, it can be rectangular, triangular, I meant to say, and things like that. It's always square. So if I use this image in Campaign Cartographer as it is, it would mean that it would have these big white borders basically overlapping what's below it. So that's the first problem. And the second problem is the size of these images. Campaign Cartographer expects images to be in a certain size. We need to resize them. So this is basically the two things I need to think about when downloading images from the net. Now, if I have been looking a little bit more, I could probably have found images which was already in .png format with transparent backgrounds. The PNG format is the preferred format used for symbols in Campaign Cartographer, and PNG supports transparent backgrounds. Now, because an image is in PNG doesn't mean that it also has a transparent background, but there's a good chance it will already have it. If it doesn't, you need to do some editing like I'm going to show you here now. And before I go ahead and edit these images though, I'm going to show you one thing in Campaign Cartographer. I'm going to start a new map, and for this I'm just going to do a city map in the standard CD3 style. Happy with this one, and I'm going to call it temporary city. And I'm going to grab this house. As you can see, it's kind of small in this big map. I'm going to place it. Done. And, well, symbol looks okay, but let's zoom into this symbol. As you can see, when I zoom into the symbol, I get a lot of detail. And I can zoom quite far in. And you can see that the detail level in these symbols are actually very, very high. So that's one important thing you need to keep in mind when downloading symbols from the net. For a symbol to actually work and look nice in Campaign Cartographer, it needs to be a high quality, rather large image. Some images may look nice on a web page when you just look at a small copy of that image, but when you try to use it in a map and try to zoom in, you find that the image gets pixelated and looks quite bad in the map. So it's quite important that the quality of these images are high, that the size is large. So what do I mean with a large size image? Well, Campaign Cartographer expects different image sizes depending on what type of map you're making. So I'm just going to go through this and make some notes for you guys. We have three different main types of map in Campaign Cartographer. That's overland maps, we have city maps, and we have dungeon maps. Now, for overland maps, Campaign Cartographer expects that images are 20 pixels per mile. That means that if your image is supposed to cover a size on the map that is 1 mile, it should be 20 pixels. If it's supposed to cover a space on the map that is 10 miles, it needs to be 200 pixels. City maps uses a bit of a higher quality. It requires 40 pixels per foot. And dungeon maps even more so at 100 pixels per foot. Of course, the difference is here that in a city you expected to see houses and things like that in a good quality. But when you get to dungeon maps, you want to zoom into the map and you want to look at a dagger lying on the ground also in high quality. If the dagger was in the same quality as a city building, it wouldn't really look that good when you try to zoom in. So basically you can see that the amount of pixels are really a factor of the scale of the map. The large scale overland maps versus the very close scale dungeon maps. So these are the sizes we are looking for. So for example, if I want to make a bed in a dungeon, it's 100 pixels per foot. How many feet is a bed? Well, it's about 5 feet, 5 to 6 feet. I'm gonna say 5 feet because in a dungeon map we often use 5-foot grid squares for combat maps, and if a symbol fits within 1 square, that's kind of great, especially for battle map. Of course, not all symbols should be forced to fit within that 5-foot grid. That can make all kind of weirdness. But for a bed, I would say 5 foot is quite nice. So what does that mean? Well, that means this bed symbol needs to be 500 pixels long. And 500 pixels might not be that huge, but it's still quite a lot. And when you get to the larger things in a dungeon, such as larger machinery and things like that, images can get really large quickly. So these sizes are what we call in campaign cartographer for very high quality. Now, campaign cartographer operates with 4 quality levels. These are used at different zoom levels, so when you zoom out, you actually see a lower quality version of the same symbol. And you can basically make nice maps even if you only have what's called high quality symbols. Of course, high quality symbols means that you cannot zoom quite as far in as you can with very high quality. But the sizes expected here are for overland, it is 8 pixels per mile. For city, it is 16 pixels per mile, and for dungeon it's 40 pixels per mile. Basically, very high quality is 2.5 times larger than the high quality. So as long as you can find symbols that fit the high quality mark, you're still going to have symbols that will work quite nicely in Campaign Cartographer 3+, but you shouldn't really go anything below this. These sizes are also quite important to keep as exact as possible. That's because these are used when the symbols are shown inside Campaign Cartographer, and even if you can scale symbols in CC3+ after placing them, and we can actually scale the symbol definition as well, it's a lot more work if things aren't correctly from the start. And if I, for example, going back to the bed example, I make 2 beds. I make one bed that is 500 pixels, and one bed that is 250 pixels. What would happen then? Well, the 500 pixel bed would of course be twice as large inside the map, and most probably you do not want that. You want the bed, when placed down, to be the correct size to occupy 5 feet in the map. You don't want the bed to take up 2.5 feet in the map or 10 feet in the map or anything like that. You want it to be 5 feet. So by following these guidelines and resizing the symbols correctly, it means that the symbols will be the correct size inside in your map as well, and you won't get a bed that suddenly fills the entire room or something like that. So stick to these sizes. If the image is too large, scale it down to these sizes. If it's too small, you may consider scaling it up a bit, but you should also consider which quality it fits within, high quality or very high quality. If the image is basically just in high quality size, scaling it up to very high quality won't really do anything. Scaling up an image won't add any additional details anyway. So let's put this away for a little moment and let's see how we can prepare these images. So I'm gonna just show how to prepare one of these images for now, and just open the image. And right now I'm using Affinity Photo to edit this. You should use whatever image editor you prefer. This doesn't really have anything to do with Campaign Cartographer at all, and use what you like to use. But here I can see that this image is 2713 by 2375 pixels. Now, the first thing I need to decide is how large should this image be? Well, let's assume that this is intended to be a dungeon scale image. It's going to be for some special kind of map in any case, because on a normal dungeon or city map you see the map from above and you wouldn't actually see the sign symbols anyway. So it's a bit difficult to decide exactly what size would be appropriate, because I don't exactly know what I'm going to use this symbol for. But let's assume this is a dungeon symbol, and let's assume that the size across the sign here is 1 foot. Oh, sorry, 5 feet. 5 feet, not 1 foot. 5 feet. So how do I resize that then? Well, 5 feet. Dungeon symbols, 100 pixels per foot. So for 5 feet, it should be 500 pixels. Easy as that. Okay. So I have my size. I'm gonna resize it according to the width and just keep the height proportional. But before I resize, there is one more thing to consider. You remember earlier I talked about JPEG images not being transparent, and we have these white edges here, which I would love to be transparent. So let's do something about it. In this editor, I use the magic wand, click, and I hit my delete key, and I just select the outer white edges, and I delete everything. You can see from this grid behind that it's now a transparent background. That's just how the program shows it. I'm not going to make the inside transparent. That wouldn't make sense for a traffic sign. Okay, and then I can resize it. Document, resize document, and I'm gonna make it 500 pixels wide. This will be calculated automatically, and it's important to resize it in pixels, which I have here, and the image should now be 500 by 437. So now it's supposed to be 5 feet across. I save it as a PNG file. That's the important thing. And export. And I'm just gonna make a new map. No, sorry, a new folder. This folder contains the JPEG versions of the signs. I do not want to put it in there and mix them up, so I'm gonna make a folder for PNG files. Oops. And we're gonna give the symbol a sensible name. The symbol inside Campaign Cartographer will also automatically get the same name as the file name. You can change the name in Campaign Cartographer after the fact, but it's much easier and more logical to have the image names the same as the symbol names. Then it's easier to find the images later as well. So I'm just gonna call this a right turn. Note that symbol names in Campaign Cartographer has a maximum limit of 31 characters as well, so that might be worth thinking about as well when naming the file. And it's a PNG, and we're gonna save it. Okay, I'm just quickly going to do one more. Can do the roadwork sign. So I'm gonna make the edges transparent. And I'm going to resize it. Again, it's the same width, so I'm gonna call it 500. And I'm going to export it again. And it suggests the correct folder from last time, so roadworks. Fine. Of course, I have a whole folder of images here. I need to process them all. There are tools that can automatically convert whole folders of images to PNG if you need it. I'm not quite so sure if there are any automatic tools to make the background transparent. As you saw in the image, there are multiple white spaces and we didn't want to make all the white transparent, so it needed some work. But as I said earlier in the video, these were kind of worst case symbols. They didn't have transparent background, and they didn't have the right size, and they didn't have the right file format. Many images you download on the internet will already be in PNG format with transparent background, so the only thing you need to do is resize them. But you should take the time to resize them, and you should resize them correctly. Now, all my signs are basically close to the same size. You can see these would probably not be 500 wide. Maybe these should be 200 wide or something like that. So keep that in mind when resizing the symbols. There are tools that will bulk resize images in a folder as well, but you rarely want to bulk resize them because you want to ensure that each image is the correct size to fit whatever you want it to be in Campaign Cartographer. For example, that a bed should be about 500 pixels long. A wardrobe should probably be around 500 pixels wide. A long table should probably be something like 1000, or perhaps for a very long table 2000 pixels long, and so on. You need to consider each image individually and decide exactly how large it will be. My house, for example, which is about let me think, about 25 feet wide in a city map. So a city map is 40 pixels, mine is 25, so my house would be 1000 pixels wide and about 1500 pixels long. So again, consider the exact sizes you need for things and prepare them. Now, as you can see, I have two nice images here in PNG format with transparent backgrounds. The preview in the Windows folder cannot show you the transparent backgrounds, but that's okay. So that's basically what's up with preparing the images. For my next video, I will take these prepared images and actually put them into a symbol catalog in Campaign Cartographer 3+. But that was the end of this video. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.